All right, welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive. Today, we're going to be tackling Haw Par
Our
Corporation.
Par Corporation, yeah.
And, when you hear that name, you might not immediately recognize it. But I guarantee, their most famous product, Tiger Balm.
Yeah, that little red jar, it's practically a global
It
icon.
really is. You find it in medicine cabinets all over the world.
hmm
But what's fascinating is Haw Par is a lot more than just Tiger Balm.
Oh, absolutely. They've been listed publicly since way back in 1969, and their portfolio, super diverse. Healthcare, sure, but they also have leisure, property, even investments.
So kind of a mixed bag there. And that's what makes this deep dive so interesting.
Definitely.
We're going to try to figure out just how this Singaporean company makes its money, what their biggest costs are. And in a market that's, let's face it, pretty crowded, how they manage to stay ahead of the game. What do you think? What are you most curious about going into this?
I think for me, it's how a brand with such history like Tiger Balm can navigate the modern business world. Things move so fast these days.
Right. Yeah. So much change all the time. Well, let's not waste any more time. Let's dive right in. And the best place to start, I think, is with their revenue streams. The annual report lays it out pretty clearly. Their healthcare segment, that's their bread and butter, it brings in over 90% of their total revenue,
Yeah. And within healthcare, it's Tiger Balm, really the star of the show.
unsurprisingly.
And it's interesting how this brand, with its roots in traditional medicine, still resonates with so many people around the world. They saw a big jump in sales in 2023, particularly as Asian markets started bouncing back after the pandemic.
Yeah. I think there's something to be said for that brand recognition, isn't there? Like that feeling of familiarity. You see that little red jar, and you know exactly what it is.
Comforting,
Yes,
almost.
it is. But okay, let's talk about the other pieces of the pie, the other segments. What's going on with their leisure, property, and investments?
Okay, so in leisure, they have Underwater World Pattaya, that's in Thailand, and the tourism industry there is picking up again, so that's a good sign.
Positive, yeah.
Property, though, a bit trickier. They mainly lease out spaces, but their occupancy rates have dipped, so that's impacting their revenue.
Yeah, I can imagine. That's something to keep an eye on, especially with the global economy being so, well, uncertain right now.
Exactly.
But then there's their investments segment, which actually seems to be doing pretty well.
Right. They're making solid dividend income from their investments, although, markets fluctuate, so it's not always consistent. One interesting thing they have is a pretty big stake in United Overseas Bank, another big player in Singapore.
Wait, hold on. Banking and Balm?
Mm-hmm.
How did that happen? I mean, it's not the most obvious connection.
It's definitely an interesting one. The report doesn't really lay out their reasoning, but we can speculate.
Always fun to speculate.
Right. Could be a strategic move to, diversify their income, give them a bit of a cushion if things get rough with their core business.
Makes sense. A bit of a safety net.
And maybe there's potential for, synergies later on, maybe in terms of financial services or even some kind of joint ventures.
Okay, so they're not just sitting on their hands, building a little financial fortress, maybe even eyeing some strategic partnerships.
Mm-hmm.
Smart. Okay, so we know where the money's coming from, but let's flip the coin, right? Let's talk about costs.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the things eating into Haw Par's profits?
Well, the report's not super detailed on that front, doesn't give a complete cost breakdown, but we can pick up some clues. One big one for sure is their new manufacturing facility. It's in Johor, Malaysia.
Oh, yeah, I read about that.
Building a place like that, huge upfront investment, and then, of course, the ongoing operational costs. It's not cheap, especially when you need to meet those GMP standards.
Right, absolutely. Because it's not just about building the facility, it's about maintaining it, making sure production is efficient, and getting all those little red jars out there all over the world.
Exactly. It's a whole process.
It is. So what else is eating into those profits? What other costs stand out to you?
Their marketing efforts are definitely up there. They've been really active with sports sponsorships, collaborations with athletes, mostly in Europe, which seems like a strategic push for them.
Yeah, I've seen some of those. It makes sense, though. I mean, they're not just relying on their past success, right? They're trying to reach new audiences, stay top of mind.
Definitely. And those sponsorships, they don't come cheap, especially when you're talking about big-name athletes or events.
Nope, not at all.
Yeah.
And then there's the cost of managing all their properties.
Right. Can't forget about that. All the upkeep, making sure tenants are happy, it all adds up.
Yeah, it does. So production, marketing, property management, those are some of the big cost culprits for Haw Par. Running a global business is no walk in the park, it seems. But okay, let's talk about what makes them stand out. What are their secret weapons? How do they compete?
Well, I wouldn't call them secrets. I mean, their annual report talks about them pretty openly. But yeah, let's delve into those competitive advantages.
Let's do it. What gives them that extra edge?
Well, one of the biggest things they have going for them is that brand recognition and trust. Tiger Balm's been around for over 100 years. And that kind of history builds a powerful reputation. People trust what they know, especially when it comes to their health.
It's like that feeling you get when you use a home remedy that's been passed down in your family, like your grandma's secret recipe for a cough.
Yeah.
There's just that feeling of, this works.
Right, exactly, like a proven track record.
Yeah. But they're not just coasting on nostalgia, are they? It seems like they're also trying to innovate, adapt to the modern market.
Absolutely. And that's another one of their advantages, that ability to innovate while staying true to their core values. I mean, they've expanded their product line. It's not just the classic ointment anymore. There are balms, patches, lotions, even inhalers now.
Wow, so they're really branching out.
They are, and it means they can appeal to a wider range of needs and preferences.
Smart move. But, okay, let's be real. The market for these kinds of products, pain relief, well-being, it's packed. How do they stand out from the competition? Especially those big players who are all fighting for market share.
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question for any company, isn't it? And I think to understand that, we need to look at how they differentiate themselves.
Okay, so let's break it down. How does Haw Par carve out its niche?
Well, one big thing is their focus on sports-centric marketing, especially in Europe. It's a different approach than some of their competitors.
It's like they're targeting a very specific audience, right?
Exactly. They want to be the go-to choice for athletes, people who are active and prioritize their physical well-being.
It's smart. Tap into a specific need. But, okay, there are other big players out there. What about those? How do they stack up against those competitors?
Good question. So another major competitor, their thing is really high-tech. Cutting-edge technology, scientific formulations, they're all about research and development, pushing the boundaries of pain relief.
So it's almost like a battle of heritage versus high-tech. How does Haw Par hold its own against that?
Well, I think that's where their heritage and authenticity become their strengths.
Okay, I'm following you.
In a world where, everyone's trying to sell you the latest, greatest thing, Haw Par offers something different. Familiarity, trust. They emphasize their traditional formulations, the natural ingredients, their long-standing reputation.
Yeah, it's like they're saying, we've been doing this for a long time and we're good at it.
Exactly. And that resonates with a lot of people.
It does, especially in a world that feels so, constantly changing and uncertain. Okay, so we've got a good grasp of their strengths, their strategy. But even with all that, no company is immune to market trends, right? What are some of the big ones impacting Haw Par right now?
Definitely. One of the most significant is the growing focus on well-being and self-care. It's been building for a while, but the pandemic really accelerated it.
Makes sense. People are thinking more about their health, looking for ways to take care of themselves.
Exactly. And that plays right into Haw Par's hands. Their emphasis on traditional herbal ingredients, natural remedies, it fits perfectly with what a lot of consumers are looking for.
It's like a natural alignment almost.
It is. But there's another trend that's just as important, and it's connected to the first one. Consumers are demanding more transparency from brands.
Yeah. That makes sense. It's not just about buying a product anymore. It's about buying into a company's values, their practices.
Exactly. They want to know what's in their products, where they come from, what the brand stands for.
So it's about feeling good about your choices.
Exactly. And that's a challenge and an opportunity for Haw Par. They have to be open about their operations, their supply chains, their commitment to sustainability.
Yeah. It's not enough to just be a responsible company. You have to show it.
Exactly. And consumers are smart. They're doing their research. They're looking for brands that are genuine.
So the stakes are higher than ever. Okay, but let's not forget the challenges. What are some of the big threats Haw Par is facing right now?
Well, like we touched on earlier, the competition is getting tougher.
Yeah, it's a crowded market out there.
It is. There are new players entering all the time, bringing in new products, aggressive marketing strategies, and then you have the existing competitors. They're not standing still either, expanding their product lines, investing in research.
So it's a constant battle.
It is. And on top of that, there's the global economic uncertainty. The geopolitical tensions, inflation, supply chain issues.
Yeah, those are some big ways to navigate.
Definitely. It makes for a pretty unpredictable business environment. And Haw Par needs to be ready for that.
Sounds like they need to be pretty agile.
They do. They need a strong financial foundation. And they need to be able to adapt quickly.
A lot to juggle. But it sounds like they've got a good foundation, right? A strong brand, diverse portfolio, and they seem to be aware of both the opportunities and challenges ahead.
They do. And I think that's what makes them so interesting to watch.
Yeah, it really is. So, okay, we've covered a lot. Revenue streams, cost drivers, their competitive advantages, market trends, the threats they're facing. But, as we've been talking, something keeps coming back to me. Their annual report keeps stressing the importance of innovation. But how does a brand with such a long history, like Tiger Balm, balance that with staying relevant to younger generations? People who might not have that same nostalgia for that little red jar.
Yeah, that's the big question, isn't it? It's a challenge for a lot of brands. How to stay true to their roots while also looking to the future.
It's like walking a tightrope between nostalgia and novelty, right?
Yeah.
How do you appeal to people who grew up with your product while also attracting those who are just discovering it? That's something we're going to dive into next time.
We'll look at how Haw Par is navigating that tricky balance, and we'll see what lessons we can learn from their approach.
So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with more on Haw Par Corporation and their journey in the modern marketplace.
Welcome back to our deep dive into Haw Par Corporation. Before we took a little break, we were talking about how a heritage brand like Tiger Balm stays relevant, keeps up with the times.
Yeah. How do they make sure they're not just like the brand your grandparents use? How do they appeal to younger people too?
Exactly. It's tricky. But one way Haw Par is doing this is through, they're innovating. We talked about it earlier. The product line has expanded. It's not just the ointment anymore. Balms, patches, lotions, even inhalers.
Yeah, I was impressed by that. It's like they took that Tiger Balm, the essence of it, and just reimagined it for different needs.
Right. And that lets them reach a wider audience. Someone who grew up with Tiger Balm, maybe they want a patch now for muscle aches. Discreet. Or a younger person might be into the cooling lotion for after workout.
It's almost like taking a classic dish and, giving it a modern twist. Same core flavors, but the presentation is different.
Exactly. That's a great analogy. And their marketing, too. Remember we talked about the sports sponsorships. Partnering with athletes, especially in Europe, that helps them connect with a younger demographic, active people.
Yeah. It's not just about the product anymore. It's a lifestyle. They're saying, hey, we're not just for your grandma. We're for anyone who's pushing their limits, living a healthy, active life.
Exactly. It's aspirational. But let's not forget the other side of the coin, that emphasis on heritage and authenticity.
Right. Because in a world that's just like bombarded with new products and flashy promises, there's something really comforting about a brand that's been around forever. They've stood the test of time.
Totally. And they're leaning into that,
Yeah.
talking about their traditional formulations, the natural ingredients. It's like a way to cut through all the noise, to say, hey, we're trustworthy.
I've been doing this for over 100 years.
Exactly. But even with all that, a strong brand and a smart strategy, the market is always changing. What other forces are at play here? What trends are affecting them?
That's a good question. I'm curious, too. What are you seeing?
Well, one that's super relevant is this demand for transparency. People want to know what's in their products, where it came from, what the company stands for.
Yeah, like their values. It's not just about buying a product anymore. It's about supporting a company that aligns with your own beliefs.
Right. And this goes beyond just ingredients and sourcing. People are looking for brands that are socially responsible, environmentally conscious, ethical.
So you want to feel good about your choices, knowing that your money is going to a company doing the right thing.
Exactly. And that's a challenge, but also a huge opportunity for Haw Par. They have to be really transparent about their operations, their supply chain, their sustainability efforts.
They can't just, say they're doing good. They got to prove it.
Right. Actions speak louder than words, and consumers are paying attention. They're looking for brands that are the real deal.
Makes sense. Okay, so we've talked a lot about the positives, right? The good stuff. But no company is perfect. What about the competition? What threats are they up against?
Well, a big one is the competition itself. We mentioned it before, but it's fierce. New players are popping up all the time, coming in with new ideas, big marketing budgets, trying to grab market share.
Yeah, it's like a race. You got to stay ahead of the game.
Exactly. And it's not just the newbies. The existing competitors are upping their game too, expanding, innovating, finding new ways to reach consumers.
So they're fighting on multiple fronts.
They are. And then, of course, there's that global economic uncertainty we talked about, all the tensions, inflation, the supply chain issues.
Yeah, it's like a whole other layer of complexity.
It is. Makes for a pretty volatile environment. And Haw Par has to be able to handle it to make the right decisions for the long term.
They need to be flexible, adaptable.
Exactly. It's like navigating a ship through a storm.
A very appropriate analogy.
Yeah.
So, okay, it sounds like they've got their work cut out for them.
Yeah.
But they're not starting from scratch, right? They have a strong brand, that heritage, and they seem to be pretty aware of the challenge, the opportunities.
They do. And I think that's what makes them so fascinating. Seeing how they navigate all of this, it's a real testament to their ability to adapt.
Yeah, absolutely. So, okay, we've talked about their revenue, their costs, their advantages, the market trends, the threats. But something their annual report keeps stressing is innovation. And I keep coming back to this. How does a brand with so much history like Tiger Balm balance that with staying relevant to younger people? People who might not have that same sentimental connection to that little red jar.
It's the million-dollar question. So many brands struggle with it. How to stay true to their roots, but also embrace the future. It's a tough balance.
Like you have this iconic brand, right? Maybe it reminds people of their childhood family traditions, but then you have all these new consumers coming up. They want something fresh, something that speaks to them. And that's what we're going to talk about next.
We'll look at how Haw Par is managing this, how they're finding that balance, and what lessons we can all learn from their approach.
All right, we're back. Final part of our Haw Par deep dive. Before the break, we were talking about this whole idea of heritage brands staying relevant, especially to those younger consumers who might not have grown up with that little red jar of Tiger Balm.
Right, it's a challenge. How do you evolve without like losing what makes you special, what makes people connect with you in the first place.
It's not just about a new label or a trendy ad campaign.
No, not at all. It's about really understanding how your audience is changing, what they want. And we talk about the product innovations, right? The balms, patches, all that. That's part of it. But there's more to it than just new formats.
Okay, color me intrigued. What else are they doing to grab the attention of those, younger, maybe a little more discerning consumers?
Well, look at their marketing. They're being very deliberate. The sports sponsorships, partnering with athletes, that's huge, especially in Europe.
Because it's associating the brand with a certain lifestyle.
Right. Exactly. It's active, it's health conscious. It's like they're saying, we're not just a relic from the past, we're part of your life, part of your journey.
I like that. It's a good message. But I'm also thinking about, the look of the brand, that Tiger Balm packaging. It's iconic, but it's also, well, it's very traditional.
And there's definitely a danger of looking outdated if you cling to that too much. But Haw Par is interesting. They've kept some of those core visuals, the colors, the tiger, but they've brought in some more modern touches too.
So it's like a little bit old, a little bit new.
Exactly. It's like they're nodding to their history, but also saying, hey, we're evolving.
Yeah.
And it taps into this whole trend, retro, cool, old stuff becoming new again.
Yeah. It's like vinyl records making a comeback.
Yeah.
Or like those 90s fashion trends.
Right. It's that nostalgia factor. But it has to be done well.
You can't just like throw a vintage filter on something and call it a day.
No, you got to capture the essence, what made it work in the first place, and then find a way to make it relevant for today.
It's a fine line to walk. But it seems like Haw Par's finding that balance. They're respecting their heritage, but also innovating.
Yeah.
And it feels genuine.
It does. And I think there's a lesson there for any brand. Don't erase your history. Build on it. Find a way to connect with today's consumers.
Because a brand is more than just a product, right? It's a story.
Yeah.
And that story changes over time.
It does. And the best brands, they find a way to tell that story in a way that connects with people, no matter who they are, where they come from. It's about making that emotional connection.
Well said. And I think that's a perfect place to wrap up our Haw Par deep dive. We've looked at their financials, the competition, those big trends, and how they're staying ahead of the curve.
It's been a fascinating journey. Peeling back the layers of this company, who knew there was so much to uncover?
I know. But I think we've learned a lot. Heritage and innovation can go hand in hand. You can be nostalgic and modern. And to succeed, you need to really understand your customers, be willing to adapt, and always, always be authentic.
And the biggest takeaway, maybe it's this: never underestimate the power of a good story. Brands that connect with people on that level, on an emotional level, those are the ones that last.
That's a great thought. And on that note, we want to hear from you. What are your thoughts on Haw Par's journey? How do you think they're doing with that balance, between heritage and innovation? Let us know. And until next time, happy listening.
That's it for today's company review. Hopefully you learned something new today. If you enjoyed it, please like, share and subscribe. See you in the next video.